Hey there, Jamie with Brazelton Realty here. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how you can sell your house by yourself. We call these for sale by owner or FSBOs. I'm going to be talking to you and giving you 10 steps that you need to take if you want to try to sell your house yourself. Now, before I continue, you may be thinking, whoa, wait a second, Jamie, you're a realtor and you're trying to tell people how to not use a realtor? Yes, I am going to give you the steps that I think you should take in order to sell your house by yourself. But understand this, part of the reason why I'm telling you these steps is because I want you to be more informed about what goes on, and I want you to be better prepared for some of the headaches that will come along when you try to sell your house yourself. I believe that the better informed you are, the better decision you're going to make, whether it's using a realtor like me or selling your house yourself. I want you to know what you're getting into. So make sure you watch to the end of the video, because I'm going to talk at the end about some of the frustrations that come along with selling your house by yourself. All right, so step number one in selling your house by yourself is you need to declutter your house. And that means everything you possibly can get rid of or put into storage, or put them in your garage, or if you have an unfinished basement, do that, or in any storage areas you have, get rid of that. The simpler it is, the better. Then you need to clean your house, make sure it is as clean as you possibly can, and then you need to do some staging. Now, staging basically is just going to make the house look like a show home. That's what you're going for, really. You're not necessarily too concerned with its livability, because you probably wouldn't want to live in a show home. You're more concerned about what it looks like to somebody else, and can they envision themselves there. What does that mean? That means taking down all the personal effects, like family photos and stuff like that. Pull those things down. Patch any holes in the walls. Make sure it's a fresh coat of paint. Make sure the countertops are nice and clean. Put a little basket of fruit in the middle of it. Make sure you have a table in your dining room. And if you really want to do it right, then you go and get a nice set of china and put nice silverware out with napkins and center place, and really make it look like you can just sit down and have a nice Thanksgiving meal. That's what you're going for when it comes to staging. Now, you also want to make sure everything is tidied up, so beds are made, there's no toys around, that people can really just walk in and feel like they can just move in. That's what you're going for with cleaning, staging, and decluttering. Step number two, you need to take some awesome pictures of your house. Now, I used to do a fair amount of photography myself, but I still hire out my photography for listings. Why? Because they do a better job. They do a really good job. So I recommend, you don't have to do this. I realize you're trying to save money. I recommend finding a real estate photographer that has awesome pictures. Look at the work they've done and hire them. It may only cost a couple $100, but I'm telling you, those pictures are going to be so much better than almost anybody else can do. So have awesome pictures taken of your house, because that's what's going to get people in the door. If you just have really crappy pictures that were taken on like a flip phone, if those still exist, I don't even know, it's not going to look that great, and people aren't going to want to see it. You need to have good pictures. Now, step number three, go get a for sale by owner sign, like one of those yard signs you can go get at Home Depot or Lowe's or Ace or someplace like that. Go get one of those and put it up in your yard. Put the basic information, make sure that they can contact you in it. Now, this may sound simple, and some people say, well, but we live in such a digital age, why should I even bother? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, because a lot of times when people see stuff on Zillow or Trulia or whatever online platform they use, they want to go drive by. And when they drive by and there's no sign in the yard, they wonder, oh, is this the right house? Maybe that was a mistake. But when there's a for sale sign, then they know they're at the right place. The second thing it does is there's a lot of times that neighbors want some family member to move in next to them, or a friend, and they know that their friend's looking. All of a sudden you have a for sale sign that pops up, they see it, and they're going to call their friends and say, hey, you might want to check this one out. So it does drive traffic to your house, and it's well worth the small amount of money it would cost to go get one. All right, so now you're ready to list your properties. So that's step number 4. List it on Zillow, list it on Craigslist, and list it on Facebook Marketplace. Those are the 3 places I highly recommend putting that property up, making sure it's clear to everybody that you are not a realtor, that you are a for sale by owner, and you put your contact information in there so that they're capable of getting a hold of you if they want to see that property. Now, when you do this, you're also going to be uploading a lot of the pictures, and if you did some video, because a lot of times the professional photographer will do that, or you could have done it yourself. Zillow actually has a pretty cool 3D software that you can use on your phone to take a 3D tour of your house. So those are some options. You're going to want to get as much information in there. Make sure you write a nice, accurate listing on your house that explains all the benefits that you sometimes can't get with pictures. And you need to list it in those 3 places, and then sit back and wait for your phone to start ringing off the hook. Now, step number 5, and this really can be done anywhere in the process, sooner the better probably. I recommend talking to a real estate attorney. Now, you can pull down, here in Colorado, we have a set of standard forms that we use. You can pull those forms down and fill that out yourself. Most of it is fairly common sense information. I still recommend having an attorney draw those things up. He's going to do the same thing, but he's going to know some of the details behind it. He'll know the difference between a warranty deed and a special warranty deed, and things like that that most people don't know or care to know. So I recommend spending the money to get an attorney, but you don't have to if you don't want to. It's totally up to you. But I recommend getting those forms, getting them ready so that when you have a buyer come in, at least you're familiar with that contract and you can know how you're going to get that thing signed and what you are going to do moving that thing forward. Now, step number 6, and this is the exciting step. Find that buyer, or once you found that buyer, then you get the contract signed. Once you have a meeting of the minds, right, an agreement between the buyer and the seller, you and that buyer, then you can sit down and write it up in a contract and sign. Now, when you're doing this, I would prepare yourself to compensate a buyer's agent. Most buyers are going to have representation because in a hot seller's market like it is right now, it's to their advantage to have somebody fighting for them and pulling out tactics that they can use to help get their offer accepted. And so just be prepared. You're probably going to be paying, probably up to 3% anyways for this buyer's agent. So that's probably something that you're going to have to deal with one way or another. Step number 7, you need to hire a title company. You got your property under contract. Now you need a company that can perform the closing, but more importantly, they can do title research. The buyer is going to require this. Their lender is absolutely going to require this. So it's something you're going to have to do one way or another. So contract with a title company that you feel comfortable with. You can ask them their fees. Honestly, most of their fees are going to be very, very comparable, but you also need to make sure that they're insured and licensed. Most of them will be, so it's not that big of a deal, but you also make sure that you can get along with them. There's not a tremendous amount of stuff that you will do with that title company, but you need a title company that's going to help you through the process and make sure that you can get that file to closing. So that's what you need to do for number 7, find a title company. Okay, step number 8 is you need to set up an inspection. Okay, title is already working on the file, but the buyer is probably going to want an inspector to come through your property. So you're going to have to work with the buyer or the buyer's agent to get that inspector in your property. Now, once the inspector has gone through your property, he will go through everything and he'll come back with this big long list of issues with your house. It doesn't matter how old or new or perfect your house is. There will be issues, it's guaranteed. And then the buyer's going to come back to you probably and say, okay, seller, there's issues with your house. I want you to pay for them to get fixed, or I just want you to give me concessions and I'll get them fixed later. So then you're going to have to renegotiate at that point. And we have certain forms that you can pull down and use for that. There's the inspection objection, which the seller will give to you, and then you will give back a seller's resolution. understand that you probably want an attorney to go through that paperwork for you to make sure it's all done appropriately and you don't get yourself in any trouble. So that's one thing that you need to get through, probably right out of the gate after you get a contract on your house. Step number 9, you're getting close to the finish line, but you can't cross that finish line until you've dealt with the appraisal. So you need to set that up. You need to talk to the appraiser. The appraiser will probably call you. You need to set up a time for the appraiser to come look at your property. Now, if your property comes back if the appraisal comes back under the purchase price, you may need to renegotiate your purchase price. If your property comes back with some conditions, let's say there's chipping paint or there's not a railing on some stairs, then you're going to have to fix those. Just know that those are inspection items that the appraisal will flag, and you will not be able to close that loan until those are taken care of. So you're kind of have to do that. It's just something you have to do. All right, so we're at the last step now, but remember, you want to watch to the very end because we're going to talk about some of the headaches that you might not have thought about. But as far as the process is concerned, step number 10 is to schedule closing and get it closed. Now, this is not overly difficult. You need to work with your buyer's agent, possibly their lender, yourself, and the title company to come to an agreement on what time and day you're going to get the file closed, and they will regain ownership and possession of the property. So you need to just get everybody together, on a text or whatever, and come to an agreement and then schedule that with title. Not that difficult. But it needs to be done, and it's something that you will be required to make sure it happens. Okay, so here are some things I think you need to consider if you're thinking about selling a house yourself. First, you need to be prepared for a huge amount of headaches. We take on actually a lot of listings from for sale by owners because the for sale by owners are pulling their hair out and they're so frustrated because all the calls they get are from real estate agents that are trying to talk them into listing the house for them. So they're tired of it. They're not getting as many phone calls from buyers as they would like. So they eventually call us and we end up listing it because they're just tired of it because their phone is ringing off the hook and it's not the people that they want calling them. Another consideration is when you take on a real estate agent and they list your property, yes, they're going to charge you probably 6% to list that property, but there's a lot of fees that go into that 6% that you would normally have to pay. So you really have to ask yourself, how much money are you going to be saving in the long run? And is it going to be worth the headache? Is it going to be worth your time instead of just hiring a real estate agent to list it for you? Another consideration is you have to ask yourself, how much time is it going to take for you to sell your house versus a real estate agent to sell your house? Now, maybe time isn't a big deal for you, and if so, then great. But most people have a time limit that they need to get their house sold, or they need to get moved out of it, or they need to go get moved into their new house. And so they're under a little bit of a time crunch, and by listing it themselves, it will take longer to get that house sold than if you listed it with a real estate agent. Now, probably one of the biggest considerations that I think people really need to take into account before they list their own house is, will you sell your house for more with a real estate agent than if you sold it by yourself? And I can say without hesitation that you will sell it for more. I actually just had an incident a few weeks ago or months ago maybe, where a good friend of mine came to me and said, hey, I'm thinking about buying a condo right next to an investment condo I already have, but the seller doesn't want to use a real estate agent. I said, okay, well, that's fine. I can represent you and you can pay me, or you can talk to them about compensating me. Well, they were adamant they didn't want a real estate agent involved. And so my friend came up and said, hey, this is what they're going to sell it to me. Do you think that's a good deal? I immediately said, yes, you should buy it. That is a screaming deal. Don't use me. If they don't want to use me, that's fine. But it will be better for you if you go ahead and purchase that. Now, he purchased that property, and a few weeks after that, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it was a few days after that, another condo just like his came on for $60,000 more than what he paid for it. Now you tell me, did that seller save money by selling it themselves? No. It probably cost them $45,000 to sell it themselves because they were so adamant on saving that money. It cost them more money. And I see this all the time, especially in these really hot sellers markets. And that's when people are tempted to sell themselves because they figure there's so many buyers, it's not that hard to find a buyer. And they're right, it's not that hard to find a buyer. But the most powerful marketing tool a real estate agent has is being able to put a property on the MLS, and you can't do that unless you work with a real estate agent. So don't underestimate that point. That point is huge, and you will make more money by doing it that way. So with all these things, you have the tools to do it yourself, but I still recommend using a real estate agent. Now, when you are looking for a real estate agent, I recommend asking them questions. So I'm going to put a link down in the description that has 10 questions that you need to be asking a real estate agent. You need to ask them this to make sure that they are the right real estate agent for you and they're going to do a good job selling your